Hey guys, it's Autistic here. You already know we finna watch some shit on Resident Evil, and then I'm probably gonna play some Apex just 'cause I've been grinding
What are y'all
Apex like a
playing?
motherfucker. I'm I'm watching a video and then probably gonna grind more Apex.
Nice.
I got all my 2K badges and more,
Oh, that's nice.
'cause now I have what 2.5K badges.
Well, we could try to get a 3K badge with all of them when I come back.
Possibly. I mean, dude, I almost got a 4K with Maggie's. I mean, shit.
Yeah. Maggie, she's like fused. It's not hard to get
That shit
a
was weird. I've
good
never
one with her.
played her before. That was like my first
Oh,
or
really?
second game playing with her. Yeah. I started with
Dang.
1 kill, ended the game with like 11 kills and almost 4K badge.
11?
Yeah.
Did you steal some of those kills?
Hell
Or did
no.
you just do like a
Dude, I
lot
had
of?
almost 4,000 damage. I don't think I stole any of
Did you
those
just keep
kills.
on cracking people's shields or something?
I mean, you realize to get a 4K badge, it takes like 16 kills usually?
Yeah, I know. That's why I'm like, did you like steal some kills, or did you,
Hell no. I fucking
or
I
did people steal kills for you?
people stole kills from me. I should have had like 14. Dude, I had so
Sorry.
many assists at that on that game, bro. I had a shit ton of kills and assists, bro. I was going stupid with Maggie.
Nice.
I did not realize she was fun. That shit was solid. So is Catalyst. I almost got a 3K with Catalyst.
Oh yeah, he's nice.
He? It's a she.
Or she. Oh yeah, I forgot he's a she.
Catalyst is
Like
the
the one with the big black wall.
yeah. I had like 2,800 damage with her.
Dang. That's close.
That's what I'm saying. Dude, with that dude that has that can sling a third weapon, I got a 2.5K badge with him.
Oh hell yeah. He's also gonna be another one
I
to
am
get a good time
you're
with.
aggro on me.
Oh hell yeah. I just got a sub. I heard the fucking sound effect and everything. What's up, Zozo Hope? I haven't heard that in a minute. I'm happy it fucking worked.
Oh nice. Oh
What's
yeah,
up,
wasn't that
John?
not
Yo,
working
friendly.
Okay.
He's playing Ark, isn't he?
Yeah, he's playing
Ark Raiders.
Yeah, I am.
Ark. Okay.
Before he
Oh,
became
yeah.
the most
I'm
dangerous man
watching
in
a
Resident
video
Evil,
on
Albert
Albert
People are
Wesker was just
talking.
a child kidnapped,
Part of
experimented
Resident
on,
Evil.
and turned into something horrifying.
God
against
damn
his
it! I should
will.
get some
From
snacks. Shit.
You always want snacks.
I love snacks.
What's wrong with that?
Yeah, but it's like all day long. He's like, I need some snacks.
Got my Cheez-Its.
How's your Hawaiian punch going?
Got my Mikey Nice and my chocolate squares. And where's my high shoes?
Oh, you got high shoes or something?
No, I just dropped like half of me bag.
At least they're packaged.
That's okay. I got them. I got them all. Any more dropped? Hell no.
So yeah, Cody.
High shoes.
I have been playing Arc Raiders lately and trying to get
Let's
hang
get
the hang
into
of
this
it.
freaking reaction. And then I want to play some Ape 6 Legends.
Let's go.
Alright, let's get this bag out of the way real quick though. There we go, let's get into it.
his abduction into the Wesker Project, to the destruction of Umbrella, to his final ambitions
Cheers,
of taking
yeah.
over the entire world, this is the complete story of Albert Wesker.
This is the
When it
complete
comes to
story
Albert
of Albert
Wesker, there's
Wesker.
almost nothing concrete about his early life. Even his real name is unknown, but what we do know is that from a very young age, his life was already being controlled. He was taken from his parents by agents working under Oswald E. Spencer and
Find
placed
out
into a
that
program
this dude is the start of it all, which then is explained in 7 and 8.
funded by the Spencer Foundation. This was the very beginning of what would later be known as the Wesker Project. The goal was simple on paper, but extreme in its execution. Spencer wanted to raise a group of highly intelligent individuals who could one day be infected with the progenitor virus and hopefully survive it. If successful,
like, "You
they
know
wouldn't
what?
just live,
I'll
they'd
make
become
these
something beyond.
superhumans. Let's expose them to a virus."
You gonna play some Apex tomorrow?
Huh?
Are you gonna play some Apex tomorrow?
I'm probably Apex like after the video game.
Yeah, I know, but are you doing it tomorrow too?
Yeah, probably.
Beyond human. So from the start, these children were raised in controlled environments, given access to the best education possible, and pushed into fields that would develop their intelligence as much as possible. They were all given the same name of Wesker, removing any sense
You got all these males and females, and you're just gonna call them Wesker. No, that's wild. So where the fuck are these other Weskers then?
of individuality they could have possibly had.
In the Resident
They weren't
Evil
being
series,
raised
like
as
what?
normal people. They were being shaped to carry on Spencer's ideals. Ideals centered around the belief that humanity, as it existed, was fundamentally flawed. War, disease, and instability weren't seen as temporary problems, but as proof that the human race had reached its limit. Most of the children followed that path, but Albert stood out early on.
Okay,
He
that
showed a
makes
level
sense.
of ambition that went beyond what was expected. While the others were being trained to fit into Spencer's vision, Wesker had fully leaned into it. He chose to pursue
went into
biotechnology,
straight
putting
chaos.
himself in a position where he could directly work with the kind of research that would define his future. And from that point on, everything he
Wesker's
became
crazy. If you've ever seen or played the Resident Evil games other than Biohazard and Village, Wesker is crazy, bro. Straight dodges bullets like the Matrix.
Oh yeah.
He's fucking insane. And his eyes glow red like a vampire.
he traced back to this. He wasn't just raised to be part of the project, he grew into one of its most successful results. By 1977, Wesker's talent had already put him on the radar. He was recruited by the Spencer Foundation and brought into the Umbrella Corporation, where he was placed into the Umbrella Executive
I saw that
Training
you
School.
lost it.
The program was designed to take
Yeah, I
gifted
did, but I
individuals
just
and
gained
push them
another one
further.
back. I went
Students
from
were trained in
116 to
advanced scientific
114
fields,
to
but more importantly,
115.
They were shaped to think a certain way.
That's how it's gonna be, bro.
Prioritize results above everything
I mean, overall,
else.
you gained
Most
a
of the class
one.
didn't stand out, but two of them did. Wesker
Yeah,
and
yeah.
a 16-year-old boy named William Birkin both showed this.
William Birkin's a fucking crazy bitch.
You're gonna be famous.
I hope so. But in like the chillest term possible.
Same combination umbrella
I ain't
value,
trying to like blow up in like 2
intelligence,
seconds. I'm
strong
trying to like
focus, and a
organically
willingness to
grow.
cross lines if it meant progress.
Yeah,
Their
for
performance
sure.
caught the attention
So I don't
of
know
James
where the
Marcus,
fuck Kai
one of
Cenat came
Umbrella's
from,
founders.
but he just popped
began
out of
working
nowhere.
closely with them and eventually trusted them with his research. However, that trust didn't last very long. After a series of internal incidents, the training center was shut down. Wesker and Birkin were transferred to the Arklay laboratory as senior researchers, and before leaving, they took a completed strain of the T-virus with them.
Yeah,
From
and then
there,
dropped
their
the
work
fucking
shifted
T-virus.
directly into Umbrella's main research. At Arklay, they began modifying the virus, looking for ways to
thinking about the
improve how
movie.
it functioned inside the human body. One of their earliest breakthroughs came from combining it with Ebola-based genetic.
So they mixed the T virus with Ebola, and that's how the zombie outbreak came.
material. The result
Said
made
Ebola.
it easier for the virus to bypass the immune system,
Sorry.
increasing the chances of a host surviving the infection.
I guess that makes
opened
sense.
up new possibilities, and as progress
Yeah.
continued, Umbrella
'Cause
began demanding more
Yeah.
advanced results. In 1988, Spencer gave the order to eliminate James Marcus. Wesker and Birkin were both present during the operation. Marcus was killed and his research was recovered immediately after, and with him gone, Spencer had full control over the project.
Damn, they had
The
bro
next step
murked
was
just
the
to
new
get
Tyrant
control over the fucking the science projects, basically. They said I'm gonna kill my boss so I can have full authority over my over my shit, cuz.
project. The goal was to create bioorganic weapons that could retain intelligence and follow commands.
Bioorganic
The issue was
weapons that can
consistency.
retain
The virus only
intelligence.
produced
But
those
they're
results
ugly
in
as
extremely
fucking
rare
gross as
cases,
shit.
so
Like, what the
development
fuck you
slowed down.
mean?
To work around that, Wesker and Birkin turned to a different approach. They acquired a parasite from Umbrella Europe known as Nemesis Alpha. Instead of relying on the host's
the
natural intelligence,
Nemesis.
the parasite could take control and carry out orders itself. They tested it on a test subject named Lisa Trevor. Her body rejected the parasite, but the data gathered from that experiment led to something very important. It contributed to the discovery of what would later become the G virus. And after that point, things started to shift. Birkin was transferred to Nest, and Wesker stepped away from the Arclay laboratory. He had started questioning certain decisions being made at the top, especially projects that didn't seem to serve a clear purpose. Instead, he moved into Umbrella's intelligence division. From there, he had access to a different side of the organization. Throughout the 1990s, Wesker expanded his reach. He operated under the identity of a former Umbrella employee, which gave him flexibility to move between
Ex-Umbrella
different groups. At one point, he
employee,
served in the US Army as an
own.
engineering officer, using his background in biotechnology. Most of his work during this time is still classified, but it's likely tied to ongoing bioweapons development, all while continuing his own agenda. Around that same period, Wesker had a brief relationship with a woman from Edonia, whose last name
The
was
fuck?
Mueller, but it was short-lived, and he
Oh.
moved on without thinking much
L.
of it. He
He
never
said,
knew she
"Fuck
would
that
end
hoe."
up pregnant. It would end up mattering more than he
It was a
ever
one-night
expected,
stand, and he said,
because
"Fuck
when the
that
woman
hoe."
gave birth, she named the boy Jake, and he would end up becoming the spawn of Wesker, gaining enhanced strength, speed, durability, and viral immunity
Wesker had
from
a
Wesker's
kid?
genetically
What the
modified
hell?
blood, although the two would never end up meeting in person, and Jake would long consider Wesker a deadbeat father. with no
You
male
call
guidance in
Wesker a
his
deadbeat
life.
father. He said, "Fuck my dad, he deadbeat." Even
What the
though
fuck?
hey, Wesker was like fucking straight.
They got a deadbeat daddy, spit him in the dirt.
Even though fucking Wesker was like a complete gangster.
Jake would long consider Wesker a deadbeat father. With no male guidance in his life and born into extreme poverty, Jake would ultimately turn to crime and mercenary work to get by. He only turned his life around after the events of RE6, choosing to use his genetic gifts to make the world a better place.
Huh.
After his time in the army, Wesker was brought back into Umbrella's operations in 1996. This time, his role put him right in the middle of Raccoon City. He was assigned to STARS,
Nigga
the
looks
Special
so
Tactics and Rescue Service, a high-level unit within the Raccoon City Police Department. Officially, the group was formed to handle serious threats like terrorism and large-scale incidents. In reality, it gave Umbrella something far more valuable, a direct presence inside local law enforcement.
Wow.
Wesker was placed in charge of Alpha Team, putting him in a position above Bravo Team's captain, Enrico Marini. From there, his job was simple: just maintain the cover.
Pineapple
For the next 2
banana,
years,
that
he
shit
worked
bussin'.
alongside his team, building trust and establishing himself
No,
as a
right?
reliable
God.
leader. People like Chris
Wait,
Redfield,
Mike, good
Joe
night.
Valentine, Barry Burton, Brad Vickers, and Joseph Frost had no reason to question him. To them, he was just their captain, but at the same time, Wesker was still working toward Umbrella's interests behind the scenes.
How the fuck
By the
is that
spring and
stuck to
summer-
Wesker's ear? I just thought about that. How the fuck is that stuck to Wesker's ear? I've watched this clip so many times, like in different videos and shit, or in gameplays. I just realized this now. How the fuck is this radio and headset stuck to his head if it has no headband?
Maybe it's like implanted.
You see my
Or
stream?
like, not right now. Could be
Hmm.
drilled into his head.
I can. Here, let me share my screen.
That one rapper that put a diamond in his head. And
Oh,
got
you're talking
ripped
about
out.
Lil Uzi Vert?
Yeah.
Someone tried ripping out of his forehead. That's why.
I'm pretty. They did.
Yep. It was
Like
bleeding.
successfully, it did.
But you see this shit? I just screen shared my thing on Discord.
Yeah.
You see that shit? How the fuck is that connected to his head?
Hold it. Oh,
How is
it's
that?
like suctioning to his head.
How is that connected to his head? Look,
Had no
That's
reason
weird.
to question him. To them, he was just
How
their
is
captain.
that
But at the same
connected to
time,
his
Wesker
head?
was still working toward Umbrella's interests behind the scenes. By the spring and summer of 1998,
no.
things inside Umbrella were beginning to fall apart. At the Arklay laboratory, a new strain of the T-virus began spreading among the staff. Once the outbreak was detected, the entire
I'm just trying to
facility
find
was
some.
placed under quarantine. Guards were ordered to lock everything down and eliminate anyone who tried to escape. Wesker and William Birkin were sent in not long after, and their priority wasn't to contain the outbreak. It was to recover something extremely important.
Them weirdos.
Inside the lab, they focused on securing the cloned embryos of the T-002 Tyrant, one of Umbrella's most valuable assets at the time. At the same time,
T2
Wesker gave orders to
fucking
cut off
Tyrant.
communication from the facility, limiting how much information could get out. But the
I'll be right
situation
back.
didn't stay
I
contained
bet.
for long. Several Cerberus
Ooh.
BOWs managed to escape and made their way into Raccoon
Mango
Forest.
Delight.
From there, the attack spread to civilians. Survivors were infected, and the
like
number
that,
of
bro.
killings started to climb. By July, over 20 people had been killed. The Raccoon City Police Department couldn't find a clear explanation. With no suspects and no real pattern, the incidents were
Peachberry.
blamed on a possible cult. Public pressure kept building, and eventually the case was handed over to STARS. And at that point, Umbrella needed a different approach. They activated what was known as the X-Day
this
plan.
one's gonna be
Wesker
bad.
was given a set of
Oh my
orders
God,
tied directly to the upcoming investigation. His role was to use STARS to gather combat data against the BOWs, recover any remaining research, and then destroy the Arklay laboratory
I need to
to
go
erase
looting
all
for
evidence.
cereal,
How the
bruh.
fuck are you
Now
gonna
look back.
contain a tyrant? How are you supposed to extract a tyrant? That's my question. They're like, the goal is to extract all the research. How are you supposed to extract a fucking tyrant that'll rip your head off, or put his arm through you in like 2 seconds?
Any remaining research, and then destroy the Arklay laboratory to erase all evidence. The team wasn't meant to make it out. On July 23rd, Wesker made sure of that. He sabotaged Bravo Team's helicopter before they were deployed, removing their ability to
That's so
escape
fucked.
and setting up Alpha Team to be sent in afterwards. Everything was being set into motion. Around the same time, Wesker and Birkin were dealing with another
Oh, you like watching
situation
a
tied to
recap or
Umbrella. Plans were already in place to reopen
Are you watching a recap?
No, it's kind of just background on Albert Wesker.
Oh, okay.
in the executive training school, but before that could happen, another outbreak hit. A mutant leech colony attacked the facility, wiping out investigation teams and infecting a train carrying Umbrella personnel. At that point, the decision was made to
Ew.
destroy the entire site. While there, Wesker crossed paths with Colonel Sergei Vladimir, one of Umbrella's high-ranking officers. The situation had escalated enough for headquarters to get directly
motherfucker
involved.
creepy.
Wesker made it out before the facility was destroyed, but that incident changed something. Up to that
He
point,
just pulls
had been
out.
working within
He just
Umbrella's
pulls up
system,
on top
but
of a fucking, like, turned fucking subway. And was like, "What's up?" Just spinning his fucking sword around, or his weapon around. Like, the fuck?
That's
That's creepy as shit, bro. You pulling up on me like that? Fuck no, I'm getting the fuck out. Bye.
After seeing how unstable things had become, he started looking at it
Yeah,
differently.
just like punch
Staying
him and
loyal to
run.
the company
Right.
no longer made any sense. Not long after, he
Strawberry
accepted
banana.
an offer from a rival organization. In exchange, he would hand over the Tyrant embryo samples instead of returning them to Umbrella. And from
The
that
what?
moment on, Wesker wasn't just working inside the system anymore. He was playing both sides.
Yeah, he's working.
On the night of July
by
24th,
himself at that
Wesker led
point.
Alpha Team into the Arklay Mountains. Everything was going according to plan. Before the mission,
He's
he had
like,
been given
"I'm the
something
div-
important,
I'm the
a modified
virus
strain
drug
of
dealer."
the T-virus. It was designed to
I choose who I want to sell it to.
enhance his body, increasing his strength and allowing him to regenerate from injuries that would normally be fatal. He wasn't going into
Cody,
this
how long have
blind.
you been playing
Shortly after
Arc
arriving
Raiders?
at Bravo Team's last known
Pretty
position,
much since
the
it came out,
situation
but
escalated
not,
fast.
like, super
The team found the
consistently.
remains of their pilot, Kevin
Oh,
Dooley,
yeah.
and
I'm not a
almost
diehard or
immediately came
nothing.
under
I've never
attack by a
even
pack of
reached a million
Cerberus.
coins.
Joseph Frost was killed during the encounter, and
A
Brad
million?
Vickers panicked and fled in the
Dude, people get up to
helicopter,
like fucking
leaving the
15
rest of the
mil.
team
Like,
behind.
it's
With
insane
no way
shit
out,
on this game.
Wesker led the
Oh,
survivors toward the
watermelon.
Spencer mansion. Once inside, he took control of the
I'm
situation.
broke as fuck
The
Watermelon?
team was
now.
split into smaller groups to cover more
How much you
ground,
got?
each one sent to investigate different
Like,
sections
not
of
even
the
100.
estate. At the same
Ooh,
time,
not
Wesker
even
started
100K right
handling
now.
things from behind the scenes. He pressured Barry
I'm like
Burton
at
into
90,
cooperating by
90K.
threatening his family, forcing him to help
Oh,
deal
kiwi
with any
banana
evidence
ammo.
tied to Umbrella.
Ooh.
Big bro.
Not long after, Wesker encountered Enrico Marini in the underground tunnels. Enrico
The
had
fuck?
already figured out that Umbrella was involved. Wesker didn't hesitate. He shot him on the spot and disappeared before anyone else could arrive.
Damn.
From there, everything moved toward the final phase of the plan. Deep
Straight
inside the
mama.
laboratory beneath the
Ooh,
mansion,
no
Wesker
strawberry
prepared to
banana.
release the Tyrant and use it to eliminate the remaining STARS members. Before activating
Huh?
it, he injected himself with the experimental virus strain he had been given earlier. Not
The
long
fuck?
after, he was confronted by the others. At that point, he dropped the act.
He
Wesker
said,
admitted
fuck
his
this. I'm gonna inject myself with this shit. And then I'm gonna let a tyrant out and kill your asses, cuz. He won't be able to touch
role in the
me.
entire operation and activated the Tyrant so it would kill everybody in the room. Recognizing him as part of the project, it attacked Wesker without
killed
hesitation,
Wesker
impaling
instantly,
him
though.
straight through the chest before moving on to the others. That should have been the end, but
But
there
it
was a
didn't,
catch.
'cause he had
Wesker
the-
actually wanted the Tyrant to kill him in front of
Oh,
the
he
others,
wanted
so he
that.
could carefully
What
fake
the
his death.
fuck?
He knew the T-virus strain had already taken effect. The
Oh,
mutation gave
yeah,
him the
'cause
ability to regenerate,
T-virus
and after the encounter,
regenerates
he
him.
eventually regained consciousness in the now empty lab. At that point, the situation had completely collapsed. The self-destruct sequence had already been triggered, and his access to Umbrella's systems had been locked out by Colonel Sergei Vladimir and the Red Queen AI. There was
Oh,
no
yeah,
time to
Red.
recover the Tyrant embryos or any of the research data he had planned to take. All
Yeah.
he could
Other
do
one.
was get out. As the mansion began to fall apart, Wesker made his escape, surviving the destruction and disappearing before anyone could confirm what happened to him, to Umbrella, and to
Man's
Stars.
running
He
like a
was
speed
dead,
demon.
and that gave him exactly what he needed, a clean break to start
Facts.
shaping
Everybody
the world
thought he
from the
died.
shadows. After the
CF
mansion
in the
incident,
organization,
Wesker
what
stayed
the fuck?
hidden, choosing to operate through other people instead of showing himself directly. At this point, he was working with Umbrella's rival company, known only as the Organization, and they had their sights set on Umbrella's research. When William Birkin completed the G-Virus, plans were already in motion to steal it. Wesker acted as an external handler, coordinating with their agent on the ground, Ada Wong. Originally, there was another contact in place to assist her, but that fell apart when the outbreak in Raccoon City escalated. The agent chose to unalive himself rather than turn, so Wesker stepped in remotely. Through a computer feed, he guided Ada during the final stages of her mission. Once she confirmed that she had secured a sample of the G-Virus, he directed her toward an Umbrella evacuation helicopter leaving the city. That ended up being her way out before the bombing. With G in their hands, the next phase began. The organization started sending out its paramilitary unit, known as the HCF, to raid Umbrella's facilities and recover whatever was left behind. Wesker took direct control of one of those operations in December of 1998. The target was Rockford Island, and this location wasn't random. It was tied to the Ashford family. The now deceased Edward Ashford was one of the original founders of Umbrella, but more importantly, his granddaughter Alexia was the creator of the T. Veronica virus, a highly stable and advanced strain of the T virus that allows the host to retain intelligence. If there were any surviving samples, the Ashford estate was one of the most likely places to find
Isn't
them.
the
The assault started before the main force even arrived.
family, the fucking... Oh, maybe I don't remember.
Saboteurs planted
I'm trying to
explosives
associate
across
it with
the
the
island,
movie.
triggering a large-scale outbreak and
Right.
releasing BOWs into the environment. Not long after, the main attack followed, with airstrikes tearing through what remained of the facility. Wesker was on the ground during the operation,
Ooh, some
personally
sea salt
overseeing the
dark chocolate
search,
caramel.
but the mission didn't go the way he expected.
Ugh,
There were
I
no
was never a
usable
big fan of
samples
caramel.
left on the island.
I love caramel.
Instead, he found something else. Claire Redfield had been captured by Umbrella and was being
Claire
held there.
Redfield?
Not long after, her brother
Chris is her
Chris
gonna
arrived
come
looking
out
for her.
Yeah.
Wesker
catch
crossed
her.
paths with both of them, and on both occasions, he came close to killing them, but he didn't actually get the chance. After learning that Alexia Ashford was still alive,
Alexia
he shifted focus and
Ashford?
left the island. His next
His fucking
destination
eyes
was
look like
Umbrella's
snake
Antarctic
eyeballs.
base, and the situation there wasn't much better. The outbreak from Rockford had already spread, and the facility was in chaos by the time Wesker arrived. He made his way inside and eventually came face to face with Alexia. For the first time, he had direct access to what he had been looking for. He demanded a sample, but she refused, and then things escalated. Alexia began mutating into a far more powerful form,
What the
something
fuck?
Wesker hadn't accounted
I did
for.
not
For once,
think
he was
about that.
completely outmatched and forced to pull back.
I don't know
Shortly
about that,
after,
Bob.
his team recovered the body of Steve Burnside, another subject tied to the T. Veronica experiments, and they managed to get a T. Veronica sample from his body. With that, they regrouped and prepared to leave. But Wesker wasn't done yet. With both Chris and Claire now in Antarctica, he saw an opportunity to finish things. He captured Claire and brought her back toward the submarine, using her to draw Chris in. He eventually let her
That's
go,
weird.
more interested in facing Chris directly. When the two finally fought, Wesker had the advantage early on. His enhanced strength made it easy to overpower him, but Chris managed to turn it around. Using the environment, he brought down heavy steel girders onto Wesker, pinning him long enough to create an opening. By
That
that
was one of
point, the
them older
facility was
games.
already close to collapsing. With the entire situation falling
Which one
apart
are you
and his
reviewing?
body damaged, Wesker chose
It's
to
just part
disengage.
of the story of Albert. I never played Code Veronica, which came out like a long
Okay.
time ago. Let me see when it came out. Code Veronica came out in 2000. So
And
the game is 26 years old. That's why I am saying. I was like, yeah, this has to be one of the older games.
He returned to the submarine and left Antarctica behind. The mission wasn't a complete failure, but
This looks
it
like a
wasn't a clean
PS1
victory
game.
either.
it's
By
gonna
the
be like
early
8-bit.
2000s, Umbrella was falling apart, but Wesker wasn't slowing down. At this point, he had access to some of the most valuable bioweapons in existence: G-Virus samples, T. Veronica, and even modified versions of Umbrella's older BOWs. Instead of focusing on research, he shifted into something else: distribution. Wesker started taking on a more direct role
Yeah,
in
he was
selling
like, you
these
know what, I got
weapons to
all
outside
these
groups,
viruses,
supplying
like
whoever was
drugs.
willing to pay.
I'm gonna sell
By
them like
2002,
drug
one of those
dealer.
clients was a drug lord named Javier
Called
Hidalgo, the leader of
a-
the Sacred Snakes cartel.
A
Hidalgo
dude
had
part
already been
of a
dealing with
cartel wanted to buy one of the viruses.
Umbrella for years, but by that point, things had started to change. Prices were rising, and he began to suspect he was being taken advantage of. Wesker stepped in and redirected him. He convinced Hidalgo to cut ties with Umbrella completely, framing them as unreliable and unstable. At the same time, he warned him about a
man
supposed third-party
Justice with
broker
his little
asking
gold
questions about
chain
his
and shit.
operation, claiming it was actually an Umbrella
His hair
agent
looking all goofy.
investigating him. But in reality, Wesker was controlling the situation from both sides. Not long after everything had escalated, Hidalgo lost control. After his daughter ran away, he snapped. In response, he unleashed the very weapons he had been supplied with. A viral outbreak spread across the surrounding region as his forces, along with infected civilians and BOWs, began tearing through nearby communities. Wesker didn't intervene, he just watched from a distance. As the situation began to spiral, the US government deployed a unit known as the Anti-Umbrella Pursuit and Investigation
Leon
Team.
Kennedy.
They were already in the area investigating the same broker Wesker had mentioned, and now they were forced to deal with a full-scale outbreak. In the end, Hidalgo was killed, and the operation was shut down.
Hidalgo.
But that wasn't the only thing Wesker gained from that incident. It brought someone else to him, Jack Krauser. Krauser had been part of the mission. He survived, but not without consequences. His
Fuck him.
injuries forced him out of active service, leaving him with nothing to fall back on. He tracked Wesker down himself. Krauser
And he
believed Wesker could
becomes
give him a new purpose, something
fucking
beyond what he had
tyrant.
lost, and Wesker saw the value of that immediately. Not long after, Krauser faked his death and disappeared from official records. From that point on, he was working directly under
Like, not
Wesker,
even
someone
close.
he could rely on, and someone who would follow his orders without question. By early 2003, attention started shifting towards
We were just
Umbrella's
talking
last
about
remaining
that, too.
operations.
Yes.
A series of strange incidents in the Caucasus region caught the attention of Wesker's
Caucasus
organization.
region.
The signs pointed to another
What's good?
outbreak, and it didn't take
Ayala?
long to figure out why.
Ayala?
Umbrella still had a base there, a hidden facility
I never
built
know how
around
to
an
say
oil
your name, I'm not gonna lie.
plant, one of the company's final strongholds after everything had already happened.
Wait, hold up.
Towards Umbrella's last remaining operations, a series of strange incidents in
The
the Caucasus region
fuck?
caught the attention of
Caucasus
Wesker's
region.
organization. The signs pointed to another outbreak, and it didn't take long to figure out why. Umbrella still had a base there, a hidden facility built around an oil plant, one of the company's final strongholds
kind of
after
makes
everything
sense
that
why
had
the
already
movies
happened.
kept
Wesker went there
jumping
himself.
around everywhere.
His target wasn't the outbreak,
but never had
it was
Wesker
something much
really
more
in it.
specific. The UMF-013
I guess it kinda did,
supercomputer
but not
from the
really.
Arklay laboratory, the same system that had been taken years earlier by Sergei Vladimir just before the mansion incident. That machine held years of research. If Wesker could get it, he'd have access to everything Umbrella had been hiding. When he arrived in the region, the situation had already gotten out of control. A nearby village had been overrun, and the hunters that were supposed to be contained there had escaped. While searching for data, Wesker crossed paths with two familiar faces, Chris Redfield and Joel Valentine. Both of them were now part of an anti-biohazard unit and had been sent in to investigate the same outbreak. Wesker didn't stop to deal with them. He had a priority, and he stuck to it. After securing what he needed,
He said,
moved on
"Fuck
toward
this,
the main
I'm coming after
facility.
y'all bitch
And I'm
asses."
also
The
trying to
story of
secure
this
what I
game
need.
is crazy.
So
That's
if
what
you're
I'm
enjoying the
saying,
video
bro.
so
Right.
The story of this game is crazy, especially just Wesker in general. Wesker's a crazy motherfucker. I didn't realize that he was put into like a fucking like program where a bunch of people were just named Wesker. Males, females, they're just all named Wesker. He was the only one who actually took initiative to become a bio like scientist and shit, and that's why he became the fucking one that stood out. That's crazy.
far, consider hitting the like button and subscribing for more videos just like this.
So I didn't know that. I
But
thought he
back
was
to
just some
it.
crazy
By the
ass
time
dude
Wesker
who got
reached Umbrella's
infected.
base, it was already collapsing. Most of the staff had either been killed or infected. Vladimir was one of the few still holding things together, and getting inside wasn't simple. Wesker had to fight through Vladimir's personal guards, the Ivan units, before he could actually
no.
reach the
Ivan
control
unit.
center. By the time he got there, the situation had already gotten out of control. Vladimir was overseeing a fight between the T-Alos unit and Chris and Jill. Instead of backing down, he took things further, injecting himself with a perfected strain of the T-virus to match Wesker in combat. The fight didn't last. Wesker eventually came out on top.
No
With
shit.
Vladimir gone, he
Vladimir
finally had
look-
access
looking
to
on
what
like
he
a
came for.
fucking-
He downloaded the entire contents
Wesker looking like a goddamn tomato. Or not Wesker, the other dude. Vladimir looking like a goddamn tomato. You just pop that bitch.
of the UMF-013, Umbrella's archived data, everything from internal research to records of their operations. Then, he erased it. Using the Red Queen system, Wesker wiped the servers clean, leaving nothing behind for anyone else to recover.
He said, fuck
Chris
you
and Jill
guys,
were
you ain't
left with
finding no
nothing,
details
but
about
Wesker
nothing
didn't
I
keep
did.
the data to
Fuck outta
himself.
here.
Soon after, portions of the archives were handed over to the US government.
Oh,
At the
shit.
time, Umbrella was already locked in a legal battle over the destruction of Raccoon City.
You got
So the
Leon
information
Kennedy,
Wesker
my
provided
boy.
changed everything. It gave the courts exactly what they needed. Proof. Clear evidence that Umbrella had created the virus
No shit,
responsible for
Umbrella
the
was a
outbreak.
bunch of
After
dum-dums.
that, the outcome was inevitable. Umbrella was found liable, forced to pay
That's
for
why
the
in the
damage they
movies,
caused,
Alice just tries to
and pushed
fucking
into
blow him up
bankruptcy.
the whole time.
Just like that, the company that had defined the
For
entire
real.
series was finished.
For
At
like
least on
6
paper,
straight movies, she
because
just
even
tries
with
to
Umbrella
blow up
gone,
everything
the
in
damage it
Umbrella,
caused
trying to
was still
fucking
far
figure out
from
what's going
over.
on. Find out she just got cloned for a shit ton of time.
Not long after the Caucasus raid, Wesker started putting the Umbrella
Caucasus
archives to
raid.
use. One of the first people he brought into the loop was Excella Guillon, a geneticist working for Tricell. She had the same kind of mindset he did, focused on results
leads
with
into,
very
like,
little
4,
regard for
5, and 6,
anything
I believe.
outside of that. Wesker gave her access to detailed information on the T-Virus project, research that Umbrella had spent years developing.
Oh,
That
you guys
changed
were hired
everything
as
for
a
her.
kite to
Her
make
position
these
within
games.
Tricell grew quickly,
Had to be.
and before long, she was leading bioweapons development for the company's African branch. From there, the
feel like most
partnership
game
between the
makers
two
are high
became
on
Right,
something.
apparent. She knew more about him than most people did, including his need for a stabilizing drug.
Because they gotta be able to create something so crazy.
A progenitor-based serum used to keep the virus within his body stable enough to stop him from losing his strain.
Like, especially the
There
people
was
who
a level
made
of
Resident
trust
Evil,
there,
bro, they
at
gotta
least
be
a
on
professional
something.
level. Anything beyond that wasn't mutual. Around the same period, Wesker's attention shifted again, this time toward a group known as Los Illuminados.
That's what I'm
Through
talking
Ada
about.
Wong,
Give me the
he learned
gold.
about their work with the Plaga parasite. She had intercepted an email from one of the cult's researchers, Louise Serra, asking for help. Wesker didn't respond to the request directly.
The Las
Instead,
Plagas.
he sent in Jack Krauser. Krauser infiltrated the cult with the goal of retrieving a dominant Plaga specimen. While
That's
he
like how
managed
many
to get
students I
one,
have,
he ended up keeping
actually,
it
no,
for
I have,
himself. Even
I
after
think
helping
Legion
with the
is like a
kidnapping of the
cheap
president's
breed.
daughter, he wasn't fully trusted by the cult's leader. At the same time, things were starting to get complicated behind the scenes. The rival organization Wesker had been working with began to suspect
Dude,
him.
it's fucking cold
Information
outside. I'm
had
about to
been
fucking
leaking,
close the window.
and they believed he was
Fuck this.
planning to hand over valuable samples
Yeah.
over to Tricell, so they adjusted their approach. They brought Ada in directly. Her job was to act as a middle point between them and Louise Serra, securing another dominant Plaga sample in
Ela.
exchange for helping him escape. But she was also
I
given
am
separate
gonna go for a little bit.
instructions.
I wanna
Pass a lesser sample to
blow.
Wesker and keep the
Why?
dominant one for the organization.
I'll be back in
Wesker
a
was
little
aware
bit,
they
though.
didn't fully
Right there.
trust him, but at that
Right,
point,
bye.
he didn't have
Bye.
many options. He let it play out. In
I
the
just
end,
wanna
Ada managed to keep the dominant
blow
sample away from
why?
him,
I just
leaving him with a subordinate version instead. Still, Wesker found a way to get what he needed. After Krauser was defeated by Leon Kennedy and
Leon's
finished
the
off by
goat.
Ada, Wesker recovered a usable sample from his body. It wasn't perfect, but it was enough. By 2006, his operation had expanded even further. Working with Guillaume and a man named Ricardo Irving, Wesker helped establish a global trade network for BOWs. Weapons created through Plaga research were sold across the black market, and the profits were funneled straight back into development. At the same time, a new research facility was constructed in Africa, built in the same region
In
where
Africa.
Umbrella's founders had originally discovered the progenitor virus.
Yeah, I was gonna say
Wesker had
this is
tracked
like
down the remaining
5.
people who knew about it,
4,
and
5,
used that
6,
information to
No,
rebuild
5,
from the
6,
ground
not
up.
4, 5.
But while all of that was happening, something else was set in motion. Oswald E. Spencer was nearing the
Lost
end
my
of his
fucking
life.
eye juice.
Through Irving, Spencer arranged a meeting. When Wesker arrived at the Spencer estate, he finally got answers to questions he had been carrying for years. Spencer revealed the truth behind the Wesker project. That
Oh, shit, I
everything,
hit my
including the
extension.
viral research, had ultimately been meant to support a eugenics program. But at that point, Wesker didn't need him anymore. He killed him, right there with a
Damn.
single strike through the chest.
He said, fuck
But
you.
he didn't get to leave cleanly, as Chris Redfield and Jill Valentine arrived soon after, now working under the BSAA. The confrontation didn't last long.
BSAA?
During the fight, Wesker and
Bullshit.
Jill crashed through a window and
Oh,
fell off the edge
ev-
of the estate. Both of
anything.
them ended up surviving. Wesker made it out of the water, carrying an unconscious Jill with him. And after that, things began to change again. The revelation about his origins, the project, everything Spencer had planned, it pushed him further into a new direction. From there, he began working towards something much larger, the Ouroboros project.
Yeah,
The idea was
Ouroboros.
to create a virus that would wipe out those that he saw as unworthy, while transforming a select few into something beyond human. Jill was kept alive and taken to a Tricell facility, placed into stasis as a potential test subject. But after further analysis, it was clear she wasn't suitable. Her body had
Oh,
developed
yeah.
antibodies to the virus. Wesker didn't discard her, he instead used her for something else. She was
That's
kept under
where
control and used as one of
the
his
movie
agents,
gets from,
forced into
okay.
that role through constant drug injections. And by that point, Wesker wasn't just continuing Umbrella's work anymore. He was building something of his own, finally becoming the mastermind he always sought to be. For the next 2 years,
Ouroboros
Wesker focused
project in
everything
the
on the
fall.
Ouroboros project. At the Tricell facility, development moved fast. This wasn't just small-scale testing anymore. The goal had expanded
the
into something much
fuck?
larger, complete global release. Wesker had missiles designed specifically to spread Ouroboros into the upper atmosphere.
Ugh.
With the right deployment, the virus could be carried across the entire planet. And to make that possible, he secured a stealth bomber. The plan was pretty straightforward. Release the
Nah.
virus and
How
let the outcome
fuck did he get cleared to get a stealth bomber for the Ouroboros project, bro?
decide the future of humanity. Most people wouldn't survive, but the few who did would be forced to evolve. It was natural selection at the largest scale imaginable. However, even with how controlled the operation was, information still ended up leaking. The BSAA started hearing about a project called Ouroboros, along with rumors that Joe Valentine was still alive. They didn't have proof, but they had enough to investigate. In March of 2009, the BSAA deployed agents into the city of Kijuju.
Yeah, I think, isn't that has to be Resident Evil 5 or 6.
Where Ricardo Irving had been linked to a growing biohazard situation. Chris Redfield and his partner Sheva Alomar were sent in to handle it. They tracked Irving down and took him out. Before dying, he gave them one last piece of information, the cavern. That lead took them straight to Wesker. Inside, they came face to face with him, Excella Guillaume, and Jill. At that point, the situation was already slipping. Wesker didn't waste time trying to hold the position. After only a brief 7-minute confrontation, he and Guillaume moved to a nearby carrier where the bomber was being prepared for launch. But Chris and Sheva followed them. Once they were on board, Wesker made a decision. He decided to use Guillaume. He infected her with Ouroboros.
Damn. That's a weird shot to have paused. Whoops. But damn. He said, nah, I'm gonna infect you too, bitch.
Wesker made a decision. He decided to use Guillaume. He infected her with Ouroboros and left her behind as a distraction. The mutation turned her into something massive, tearing through the carrier and forcing Chris and Sheva to deal with her while he moved forward with the plan.
I didn't know
But by
that.
then, they had
didn't
already
play these
figured something
games.
out.
This shit wild.
Wesker needed a stabilizing drug to maintain control over his body. During the final preparations, they confronted him and forced an overdose of that drug into his system. It weakened him, but it wasn't enough to stop him. He still managed to launch the bomber and take the fight directly to them mid-air. The two sides clashed inside the aircraft, with Wesker still able to overpower them despite the damage. Eventually, the rear hatch opened. Wesker was pulled out into the open air. He tried to take Sheva with him, but a shot forced him to lose his grip, sending him falling as the bomber itself began to go down. He survived the fall, but the crash left him near a volcanic area, with his entire plan collapsing around him. At that point, there was nothing left to salvage, so he made one final move. Wesker destroyed one of the missiles and exposed himself to Ouroboros directly. If the world wasn't going to be forced into evolution, he would become it himself.
He mixed like
the final fight happened there, inside the volcano. Even in that state, he was still extremely dangerous. The mutation pushed him further, but it wasn't enough to turn things around. A BSAA helicopter arrived, giving Chris and Sheva one last chance. They boarded it, and using RPGs, they hit Wesker directly, sending him into the lava below. And this time, he didn't come back. The greatest villain in Resident Evil was killed off for good.
Damn.
Wesker's death didn't just affect the Resident Evil fandom, it sent ripples through the entire Resident Evil universe itself. The impact was felt immediately. News spread quickly through the bioweapons underworld. People like Ada Wong and Alex Wesker both heard about it, and both reacted in their own way. For Ada, it left a strange kind of emptiness. Wesker had always been there, operating in the background and pulling strings, and just like that, he was gone. Alex took it differently.
About him anymore.
To her, Wesker wasn't just another figure in the world of bioweapons. She saw him as something closer to an equal, as they were both surviving members of the Wesker Project. Losing him pushed her further into her own work, continuing her research and focusing on creating a new generation of enhanced humans. At the same time, everything Wesker had built started to collapse. With him gone, the organizations tied to him fell apart. At the same time, parts of his legacy continued in other ways. His son, Jake Mueller, inherited a natural immunity to viral infections, giving him protection against many of the same pathogens Wesker had spent years working with. And even before his death, Wesker's influence had already spread further than most people realized. Through his group, the HCF, he had been involved in early work connected to the mold, research that would later tie directly into another organization known as the Connections. That work eventually led to the creation of E001, also known as Evelyn, tying directly to RE7. And just like that, even after everything, Wesker's impact didn't end with him. It carried forward into the next generation of bioweapons. And we still don't entirely know the scale of which...
know by these stories, because a lot of people are saying that 7 and 8 are before everything, and some people are saying that 7 and 8 are after everything. I don't know what the fuck the storyline is when it comes to that, but
Wesker impacted the series. Because with RE9 introducing a character like Xeno, likely to be a clone of Wesker, I think it's pretty damn obvious even the Connections saw the potential of Wesker's power. So what else could Wesker's legacy have possibly created? But thank you guys for watching. If you made it to the end, you guys are actually insane.
Fuck
I'm
yeah.
trying to upgrade my dog shit computer so I can edit these videos more efficiently. And obviously, the longer you guys watch, the more I make off the video. So you're all helping me reach that goal, and I can't thank you enough. But if you do want to support me even more, you can watch this video on the entire history of the Connections. I know their role is pretty vague in the series.
Fuck it. We'll do Resident Evil background reactions. There we go. We'll do another one, and then I'll get into some either Resident Evil or Apex. Fuck it.
Ever since the release of RE7, something has always bothered the hell out of me. The countless bioterrorist organizations in the series, Tricell, Veltro, Los Illuminados, just to name a few, all made it clear what they were hoping to achieve, what exactly they were after, and who was leading the operations. It made it very easy to identify who exactly were blaming for all the chaos that occurs. But this wasn't the case with the organization known as the Connections, the ones responsible for the events of RE7 and partially RE8. And with the release of RE9, we're now learning that they had more influence than ever operating behind the scenes. But information about them is still very obscure. So I did a little digging and put together the entire history of the Connections as we know it so far. So let's get right into it.
Yeah, I was gonna say, because Resident Evil 9 has definitely brought up some shit about it.
When it comes to the Connections, the truth is we barely know anything about them. There's no official origin story, no clear founding dates, no single leader you can point to and say, yeah, that's the one who's in charge. They're just kind of there, operating in the background.
Facts.
But in 2026, an FBI investigation finally uncovered something very important. The Connections weren't new. In fact, they had been embedded within the criminal underworld since before the 1980s. And it didn't stop there. The investigation also revealed that they had deep ties to both the United States government and a powerful pharmaceutical conglomerate known as Tricell, with those connections dating back to at least the 1990s. So right away you start to see a pattern. This isn't just some random black market group. This is something much bigger. Something that's been quietly influencing events for decades. But the first real trace of their activity takes us back even further, all the way to 1986. And this is where things start to get really interesting, because instead of working on their own, they tried to insert themselves directly into Umbrella. Using a front organization known as the F Foundation, the Connections reached out to one of Umbrella's founders, Dr. James Marcus, and they didn't just introduce themselves, they came with money, and a whole lot of it. Documents from that time show that the F Foundation sent Marcus $30 million, labeling it as a donation. But this wasn't true, it was actually an investment. 2 years later, in 1988, something had changed. Marcus was no longer the one communicating with them. That role was taken over by his protege, Brandon Bailey. And based on recovered communications, Bailey wasn't just accepting their support, he wanted direct contact, which tells us something important. By this point, the Connections weren't just outsiders looking in. They were already working their way inside of Umbrella itself. And if that's true, then there's a very real possibility that the Connections weren't just watching Umbrella rise. They were there from the very beginning.
Okay, there we go.
As Umbrella entered the 1990s, the company was at its peak. It had government backing, unlimited funding, global influence, and on the surface it looked unstoppable, but behind the scenes, it was already compromised. The more Umbrella expanded, the more unstable its leadership became, and with that instability came leaks. Information began slipping through the cracks. Data, research, internal communications, and a lot of that information ended up in the hands of the Connections, because by this point, they weren't just watching Umbrella anymore. They had people on the inside, moles feeding them everything. But then, sometime in the mid-90s, something much bigger surfaced. One of Umbrella's founders, Oswald E. Spencer, completed a project so secretive that almost no information about it was allowed to exist. A project known as Elpis. And even with all of their influence, the Connections could only get fragments of information, but what they did learn was enough. Elpis had the potential to completely disrupt the balance of power across the entire world. Whatever it wasn't just another virus, and it was being kept in a hidden underground facility beneath Raccoon City, a place known as Ark. To the Connections, there was only one conclusion. Elpis had to be a weapon, and not just any weapon, but something capable of controlling people. Something that could reshape the entire world, and they wanted it badly. Then came 1998, the moment everything changed. The T-virus outbreak in Raccoon City. To the public, it was a disaster. To Umbrella, it was a failure. But to the Connections, it was a huge opportunity. With Umbrella collapsing in real time, the Connections moved in. They began seizing whatever they could. Research assets, data, but most importantly, they secured Ark. And to make sure no one interfered, they helped push for something drastic. A complete wipe. Using inside government influence, the Connections ordered the complete destruction of Raccoon City on October 1st, 1998. The entire city was wiped out by a thermobaric missile. It was completely destroyed, and then sealed off. For the next 28 years, Raccoon City remained under lockdown, cut off from the rest of the world. And during that time, Ark became something else entirely. A central base where the Connections conducted research, developed new bioweapons, and distributed them across the black market. They had everything they needed, except for one thing. Elpis. Despite controlling Ark, they couldn't access it, because Spencer had left behind a final safeguard, a password. One that only he knew. So for decades, Elpis remained locked away. Meanwhile, outside of Raccoon City, the world began turning on Umbrella. Trials were held to determine who was responsible for the outbreak. And once again, the Connections were there, pulling strings behind the scenes, using their ties to the US government and Tricell to influence the outcome. By 2004, Umbrella was finished. Declared bankrupt, its assets liquidated, its legacy destroyed, and at the center of it all, Oswald E. Spencer was blamed. Just like the Connections wanted, he disappeared from the public eye. Umbrella was gone, and with it, the world's attention shifted away. But the Connections, they didn't disappear. They stayed exactly where they had always been, in the shadows.
I was gonna say in the background,
But the Connections weren't just operating in the shadows of Umbrella, they were also building something of their own. And this is where things start to connect directly to
but Resident Evil is
RE7.
very good. Oh, I want to play it so badly. It'll be fun when I get to it.
Sometime during the 1990s, the
I'm
Connections
excited.
came into contact with a mysterious biologist from Eastern Europe, a woman named Mother Miranda. Now, Miranda had one goal, to bring her daughter Ava back to life, and the Connections saw an opportunity. They offered to help her. In exchange, Miranda gave them something incredibly valuable, Ava's DNA, and samples of a strange organism known as the mold, a unique fungus capable of doing things no virus ever could. At the time, the Connections were already working on a new kind of bioweapon, something completely different from what Umbrella had created. They didn't just want stronger monsters, they wanted complete control. Their goal was to create a human BOW that could infiltrate enemy territory, manipulate targets, and essentially turn people into obedient servants. And when they saw what
Which
the
was
mold
all
could
a
do,
village.
they realized they had found the missing piece. Working alongside another organization known as the HCF, the Connections began experimenting with combining the mold and Ava's genetic data. The result? A series of prototypes, completely unusable in real-world scenarios, but they kept refining the process. Each new version was labeled with a letter designation, A-type, B-type, and so on, gradually improving with each iteration. And then they finally got it right. The E-type, their most advanced line, and at the very center of it all was a
Evelyn.
single subject known as E001, better known as Evelyn.
Yeah.
Created sometime before 2014, Evelyn was the first successful human bioweapon capable of controlling others through the mold. She could manipulate thoughts,
Miranda's
influence
mother.
behavior, and essentially rewrite a person's will.
Mother
Miranda
Miranda's
herself was
cousin.
directly involved in Evelyn's development, even meeting her in
yeah.
person alongside her handlers Mia Winters and Alan Droney. And the Connections didn't stop there. They began building an entire system around these weapons. They developed a serum derived from earlier prototypes that could grant resistance to Evelyn's mind control. They created stabilizing compounds to keep her mental state in check
That's
and
badass.
slow
Good
down the rapid aging caused by her condition. And as a
Ooh, yeah,
failsafe,
that's true.
they engineered specific necrotoxins designed to kill each type of bioweapon if things got out of control, because even they understood how dangerous this was. The
That's
plan was
gangster.
simple: sell these children as weapons.
Sell
Use
the
their
children
ability
as
to control
weapons.
minds to infiltrate
Crazy.
entire regions, turn enemies into allies, and effectively eliminate the need for traditional warfare.
I guess
No
that's
guns,
fair.
no armies, just complete and utter control. And by 2014, the impact of this new technology was already being felt. Other organizations started to take notice, because if something like Evelyn could be mass
Are you
produced,
watching the
then
story so you
conventional
can play it
weapons would
later?
become obsolete.
Um,
War itself would
I'm just
completely
watching the
change.
story because it popped up, and I was like, well, I don't really know too much about Wesker.
The connections
and
didn't just influence the world of
kind of branched out
bioweapons,
into
it goes
this
even
because
deeper
I
than
didn't
that.
know about the
In
connections,
2013, something major was supposed to happen.
which is
The President of the
basically
United
just
States,
Who's
Adam
calling me?
Benford,
To
was
what I'm
preparing to
ta-
give a
or what
speech
I'm
at
playing.
Ivy University, and this wasn't just any speech.
What's
He was
up?
planning to expose the
I know someone was calling me.
Oh, gotcha.
truth. Benford intended to declassify information about the Raccoon City disaster, exposing what really happened, who was
disaster, okay.
responsible, and everything that had been hidden from the public for years. But that speech never happened. Before he could say a single word, Benford was targeted in a terrorist attack and infected with the C virus, turning him into nothing but a zombie. The attack was officially linked to an elite organization known as the Family, but here's where things start to get interesting. Later reports began to suggest that Benford knew more than he was supposed to, not just about
Probably. It's how they usually die.
Raccoon City, but about something else. The connections. There's a real possibility that Benford was about to expose their involvement, not just in Umbrella, not just in bioweapons, but their ties to the government itself. And if that's true, then his death wasn't just an act of terrorism, it was a silencing, keeping the connections as all they were thought to be, a conspiracy. Because if the connections really had that level of influence, then they weren't just operating in the shadows, they were completely part of the system, and it only got worse that following year.
More like.
By 2014, the connections had finally made Evelyn a reality, but as she grew older, things began to spring into chaos. The connections lost control of the situation. The BSAA, an international counterterrorism organization, caught wind of their project, and once they did, the connections were forced to go dark. Evelyn was transported on a ship known as the Annabelle, where she would be moved to a new lab in Central America. To maintain her condition, her handlers Mia Winters and Alan Droney used specialized tracking systems known as the genome codices to monitor her behavior, but
didn't
during the
know that.
transport, everything went wrong. On October 5th, Evelyn lost
that's probably
control.
part of the
She lashed
DLC
out,
on
damaging
Bio.
the ship and
Nimsy and
triggering a
Dingleberry.
massive explosion.
I
The
got.
blast knocked her unconscious, leaving the ship drifting aimlessly, until it eventually washed up in the Louisiana Bayou. At that point, the connections made a choice that says a lot about how they operate. They didn't recover her, they just let it happen. They allowed Evelyn to remain there. She was found by a family known as the Bakers who took her in, who would eventually become infected by her and become psychotic versions of their former selves, killing anybody who came to investigate in horrifying ways. And instead of the connections fixing this problem, they just adapted to it. By early 2015, they had established a hidden lab inside the Abercrombie salt mine, using it as a base to monitor Evelyn
Yo,
from a
what up,
distance.
bro?
And around this time,
wait.
they also recruited
Yo,
Lucas
what up, bro?
Baker, the son of Jack and
good game.
Marguerite. They would
Oh, sorry, I was talking in game. Hold on, I'm
Oh,
on mute.
hell yeah.
provide him with a specialized serum and bring him into their operation as an agent. But from there, things only got worse. Lucas kept them updated on Evelyn's
Sorry, I was just
condition,
messaging
while
somebody back.
also helping develop new variations of mold-based BOWs,
What are y'all trying to
including
run? Just
multiple
Stella again?
versions of the molded. Meanwhile, Evelyn herself was deteriorating. Without regular stabilizing treatments, she began aging rapidly. By late 2016, her condition had become unstable enough that the connection sent over a kit
I ain't gonna lie,
to
that was a
produce
really, really
specialized
good run for me. I got out with the
a last
Tempest 2
resort
and
weapon
then
designed to
7K
kill her
with
if
the shit.
necessary. But by the time it arrived, Evelyn had already stabilized herself. At a cost, she had
the
aged into the
Safekeeper-
body of an old woman,
Is the
and
Safekeeper
things didn't
augment the
stop
one
there.
where you could put
By
anything in your safe
2017,
bucket?
the connections made Lucas the lead
I
researcher
just
of the
found it,
entire
bro.
operation, and almost immediately, he turned on them. Lucas killed the other researchers, took control of the lab, and covered everything up, continuing his work independently while still
we just
pretending
finish
to
making this, and
cooperate.
that'll be good.
At the same time, both the BSAA and Blue Umbrella began closing in. They had finally tracked Evelyn down to the Baker estate, and on July 20th, 2017, everything came to a head. Blue Umbrella launched an operation into the area,
need to
assisting
beat that
Ethan
game.
Winters in confronting Evelyn. Ethan had just come to the estate looking for his wife Mia, the one who had previously transported Evelyn on the ship, unaware he would be pulled into this nightmare. Using the very weapon developed by the connections, the E necrotoxin, Ethan was able to bring her down. But Lucas? He was supposed to be captured alive,
Settings,
but that didn't
audio.
happen.
He got
Chris
mocked.
Redfield was forced to kill him, eliminating what was
Open mic, there
arguably
we
the
go.
most important lead on the
Yeah,
connections.
I haven't done
And
an
just like
expedition
that, the
yet.
trail went cold again. In the aftermath, the BSAA made a very interesting decision. They chose to keep Mia Winter's involvement with the connections a secret. In exchange for her cooperation, she was allowed to return to civilian life without facing charges. She and Ethan were placed under protection, and officially, the incident was over. But behind the scenes, people were still digging.
Yeah.
Hey, bro, can you make me something that sounds like I just died, went to heaven in Japan? and some
What
angels
the
started dancing?
Yeah, I got you, man.
Is
I don't know.
that?
A report
I
compiled by
need to
Zoe
put
Baker
two
attempted
before
to
I forget.
uncover the origins of the connections, even suggesting at one point that Brandon Bailey might have been the one who founded the organization.
shit.
But that theory didn't hold up, which leaves us with the same question we started with. Who are the
Night
connections?
Raid again, I
Because
figured.
even after everything that happened in Louisiana, we still don't have a clear answer. And even after this incident,
Trying to hurry up
the
and get
connections
this
didn't go
crafted.
away. They were still watching. Specifically, they kept an eye on Ethan and Mia Winters.
through all my
After
heals
everything
last
that
raid.
happened in Louisiana, Ethan's situation was different.
didn't
Unknown
even
to him
know
at the
anything about
time,
coming out,
he had
what?
actually died during the incident and was
Yeah.
brought back by the mold. From that point on, his body wasn't entirely human
Now they
anymore.
tease like
It
what
was
it's gonna be
mold,
or anything.
a perfect imitation of human biology, constantly regenerating and
I'm
replicating
about
his
to check it
DNA,
out, yeah.
and the
Fuck me
connections
up.
knew that, which is why when Ethan and Mia had a child in August of 2020, they paid very close attention.
Yeah, that's
Their daughter,
nuts.
Rosemary Winters, wasn't normal.
Alright,
She was something new,
defibs, heal,
something that had
shield,
never
adrenaline.
existed before. A
bring
human
a
born
zip
from the
just in
mold,
case we
and the
are
connections
in
immediately
assembly.
recognized how important that was. So they passed the
Oh, the
information
safekeepers
along
only
to
got
Mother
the one
Miranda.
safe spot,
Now, at
though?
this point,
Ugh.
Miranda was still obsessed with bringing her daughter Ava
Crazy
back to life.
bitch.
And after
It's
everything
alright,
she had
it's
learned from
alright.
the connections and the mold, Rose wasn't just interesting, she was the answer. Because if anyone had the
Yeah, yeah,
potential to complete Miranda's
fair.
work, it was her. And that's what led to
Right,
the
Night
events
Raid,
of
I'm
2021.
ready to go.
Miranda kidnapped Rose, and just like that, the Winters family was pulled right back into the nightmare. All because the connections were still pulling strings
I'm
behind
not
the
bringing
scenes.
these, I'm just
But after
bringing back
Ethan
what I
fought
had,
through the
that's what I
chaos
say,
of
the
Miranda's
anvil.
village to get his daughter back, killing Miranda in the process, the connections went cold again, forced to set their ambitions on something else. Even after everything we've talked about, the connections still weren't satisfied. Yes, they had succeeded in creating mind-controlling weapons like Evelyn, but there was a problem.
It's just
Those
processors,
weapons
bro.
weren't scalable. They worked on a small level, but they weren't efficient enough to infect entire populations. And that's what the connections really wanted, mass control. So they started looking
they're
for
really
something
easy to
better,
craft.
something
I used to
bigger.
run a
And
cycle
that's when they
where I
turned their
would
attention
get
back
wolf
to
packs,
something they had been
take on a
chasing for
bastion,
decades.
scrap all his
Elpis.
loot,
Ever since
get a
the
bunch of
destruction
oil off
Raccoon
of
City,
Dam,
the Connections
and I
had
just
believed
looped
Elpis
that
was the
cycle over and
ultimate
over and over
bioweapon,
again.
a perfected
Before that
virus
update
capable
where they
of
made it to
controlling
where the
humanity on a global
nades
scale.
needed, like,
So they poured everything into
cores
releasing
and
it.
stuff,
this
like
part of
Leading that effort were
RE9.
two key figures,
Oh, crap, we're
Zeno,
right
a
here.
high-ranking member of the Connections,
PvP right
and a
here.
former Umbrella
let's
scientist
go, let's
you
go.
already
We
know,
gotta go before
Dr.
people get
Victor
there.
Gideon. Using the incomplete notes left behind by Spencer, they eventually traced their way back to someone they believed was the key, Grace Ashcroft. To them,
Go, go,
Grace
go.
wasn't just a person. They believed she was the result of Spencer's memory transfer experiments, a living vessel carrying his knowledge, his will, and the ability to unlock Elpis. But the
Yep,
truth
yep.
was, they were wrong. Completely wrong. Grace wasn't special, she wasn't a clone, she wasn't part of any experiments. She was just a child Spencer had adopted near
Careful,
the end
Diggle.
of his life, before
Damn.
passing her
Yep,
into the
careful,
care of journalist Alyssa Ashcroft. And yet, because of that misunderstanding, dozens of children were experimented on, cloned, and killed, all in a desperate attempt to recreate something that never existed. Eventually, in 2026, Gideon finally succeeded in capturing Grace. Now an FBI agent, she was brought directly
Breaching.
to Ark, to the
Behind
place
us.
where everything began.
And
Zeno
they're
forced
across
her
from
to
us.
interact
This
with
is
the
new to
system
me.
that
Holy
controlled
shit, this is
Elpis,
all
and the machine
RE9.
asked a single question. What does the
Yeah,
creator
they're-
desire?
It's
If
terrible.
she got it wrong, Ark would be completely destroyed. Everything would be lost. But if she got it right, Opus would be
Yeah,
released.
they're fighting each other
Grace
over
thought
there.
back to everything she had learned, to Spencer's final words, and she gave her answer, hope. The system
out,
was
they're across
unlocked
from
and
us, too.
Opus was released. And in that moment, everything changed. Zeno, believing he had finally obtained the ultimate weapon, immediately injected himself with it. But instead of gaining power, he lost it. Every viral
Let's go.
enhancement in his body gone. Because
party.
Elpis was never a virus, it was actually an antiviral, a complete countermeasure to everything Umbrella and the Connections had built their entire existence
Open
around.
that shit.
And when Gideon realized this, he didn't see failure, he saw opportunity. Once again, he twisted Spencer's intentions to fit his own beliefs. To Gideon, Elpis wasn't meant to save humanity, it was meant to reset it, to destroy the current world order and force evolution through chaos. So he turned on the Connections, killed Zeno, and tried to carry out what he believed
Got
Spencer's
one.
true vision was. But that plan never happened, because Gideon was stopped, killed by Leon before he could take it any further. And with that, the entire operation collapsed. But not everything stayed hidden. After the incident, Grace compiled a report, and this time the truth came out. The Connections' involvement in the Raccoon City bombing, their influence over the US government, their role in Umbrella's downfall, and their pursuit of Elpis was all exposed.
Yes,
Or
he
at
is.
least
Got
part
him.
of it was. Because even after everything, the Connections didn't disappear. They adapted once again. Before the BSAA
Good
could
shit, good shit,
respond,
good shit.
their forces moved
I got
into
the
Raccoon
defib.
City, eliminated the remaining opposition, and retrieved an unknown objective.
Oh, that body's
And
blocking that
just
door.
like
Yep.
that,
Both
they
of
were
these doors,
gone.
actually.
At this point in time, we have
I'm
no
healing.
clue what that objective is, and no
Good
clue
shit,
where
boys.
the Connections will go from here. And when you really look at it, Umbrella was loud, obvious, a corporation that tried to play God and failed. But the Connections,
4, I'll
they
take that
learned
instead
from
of
that
mine.
failure. They stayed hidden. They manipulated everything
They
from the
did what they
shadows.
needed to
And
do.
even
heals,
now,
good
we
heals.
still don't know how
There's tons
far
of heals
the
on
reach
this body.
actually goes. Which raises one final question.
Bobcats
If
are
Umbrella
insane.
was the beginning, then what exactly are the Connections
Buddy was
building
running
towards?
hot.
But thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed today's
Ooh,
video,
Tempe?
then consider
Tempest too?
watching this one on the entire story of Dr. Victor Gideon and his obsession with Umbrella's founder, Oswell E. Spencer. But take care, and
Yeah,
I'll
go
see
ahead.
you
I'll
in
watch
a
it.
new
I'll watch
one
it. Go ahead.
very soon.
Oh, there's tons of it on that body.
And
Those
that's
buddies.
the end of those videos.
Oh, this is basically a free kit. Fuck.
Um,
I hear people.
screw it. I'll keep this as a video.
I heard a door
and then
somewhere.
I'm
It
gonna
sounded
stream
far,
again
but-
right after. Just so this can stay to one topic.
Yeah, there's people. Up top. There's second floor. That's where they're blowing off. Yeah, I got you.
There we go.
Ooh, where's my white heels? I was gonna say I need to use some lower heels. Yeah, they're definitely below us. Yeah. I need to grab some more heals before I forget. Ooh, Berletta 3. Berletta's goated, bro. I don't know if y'all know, the Berletta goes off.
Update.
It's like Kettle pre-patch.
Here we go.
I have no nades.
Let's take a couple rips and then I'm gonna end it and I'll stream some other shit.
Confused, yeah. Yep.
Alright, yo. Stay safe. Stay high. Don't let the high die. And Elo out with his bitch.